Okay, so we're getting started with Module 5, and Module 5 is all about just factoring polynomials. So the stuff that we've been adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing up until now. Now we're just looking at how to factor it. So instead of multiplying to get the polynomial, we're figuring out what got multiplied to get it. So let's just jump in and look at a few examples. Go ahead and set up a notes page if you haven't already done that. You can title it Factoring Polynomials. This is Module 5. And our essential question is, how do you factor constants and variables out of polynomials? So we're going to start out kind of simple, factoring out either the coefficient, like stuff out of the coefficients, or factoring out variables. And by the time that we're done, we'll get into being able to factor out polynomials. Just like we were doing with like you multiply two polynomials to get another polynomial, being able to actually break that bigger one up into its two smaller factors. All right, so the first example, very simple. We're going to factor, in this case, we're going to factor out a constant because I don't have a variable in both terms. I have 4x and minus 8. So I'm going to factor a constant out of this, and if I look at those two numbers, 4 and 8, I want to know what number is a factor of both of them. In other words, what number multiplies to give you both of them. And 4 is actually that number. So if I divide them both by 4, that's a terrible 4. That's a 4. If I divide them both by 4, I can't just make the 4 go away, but I can pull that out side of a set of parentheses. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 1x is just x. And then negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. So as you can see, if we were to redistribute that 4 by multiplying through by 4, we would get back to 4x minus 8. So in this case, the two factors of 4x minus 8 are 4 and x minus 2. But 4 times x minus 2 would be the factored form of that polynomial. All right, let's look at another one, 12x plus 3. Well, I know that 3 is actually a factor of 12, so I can divide both of those by 3. I'm going to pull 3 to the outside of a set of parentheses. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and I bring down the x. And then 3 divided by 3, that does not go away. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So the two factors of that polynomial are 3 and 4x plus 1. Now here I've got a negative 9x minus 18, and I know that negative 9 is a factor of 18s because 9 times 2 is 18. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by that entire negative 9, both of those. So negative 9 is going to go outside of the parentheses. Negative 9x divided by negative 9 is just 1x, and so that is x. And then negative 8 divided by negative, that should not have been a 19. That should have been 9. Divided by negative 9, negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 18 divided by 9 is 2. So when I factor that out, I get negative 9 times x plus 2. Okay, so one more example. This time I've got an x squared, but nothing about that changes. I can divide both 2 and 10 by 2. So I'm going to pull a 2 to the outside of the parentheses. 2 divided by 2 is just 1 x squared, so that's just x squared. And then 10 divided by 2 is positive 5. All right, so let's look at an example where we would actually factor a variable out of the polynomial. So I can't actually divide 2 or 3 by the same thing, but I can divide x squared and x by something. I can divide those by x. So I'm going to pull an x to the outside of the parentheses. That leaves me 2x squared divided by x is 2x. And 3x divided by x is going to be plus 3. So now if I do 5x cubed plus 2x squared, I can't divide 5 and 2 by the same number, but I can divide an x squared out of each of these things. So I'm going to pull the x squared to the outside of the parentheses. And that leaves me 5x. And then 2x squared divided by x squared is just going to be plus 2. Okay, here I have an 8x squared and a 3x. I can't divide 8 and 3 by the same number, but I can divide both of these terms by x. So x comes out to the outside of the parentheses. I have 8x squared divided by x is going to be just 8x to the first power, which is just 8x. And then 3x divided by x is going to be plus 3. Okay, so now what happens when I can do both? What happens when I can divide out a variable and a constant? So I see here, and I'm going to do this in 2 separate steps just so you can see what I'm doing. I see here first that I can divide out an x. So I'm going to do divided by x and divided by x. That leaves me 8. There's an x outside the parentheses. That leaves me 8x plus 4. Now this is like those, that's a 4. This is like the ones we did at the beginning. I can divide 4 out of 8x and out of 4. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got 4 and 4. I'm going to come over here. So now I can bring that 4 to the outside of the parentheses also. So I've got 4x out here. And then 8x divided by 4 is 2x. And then I've got plus 1. So if I were to redistribute that 4x, I would get 8x squared. If I did 4x times 2x, I would get 8x squared. And if I did 4x times 1, I would get plus 4x. So those are my 2 factors, is 4x and 2x plus 1. Okay, so here's a big long one, but I do see first that I can factor an x out of everything. And I'm going to try to do this in one step, just to save space. I see that 3, 24, and 9 all share the factor of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and pull a 3 out here also. So I'm dividing everything by 3x. So that means I'm going to do constant divided by constant, variable divided by variable. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, and x cubed divided by x is x squared. 24 divided by 3 is 8, and then x squared divided by x is x. And then negative 3 divided by 3 is going to be negative 1, and then my x's, x divided by x is just 1. So I'm not going to have a variable in that last term. All right, so here's one more. I see right away that 15 and 5 are both multiples of 5, so I can pull a 5 out. And x cubed and x squared, I can actually divide out an entire x squared. When it comes to the variables, you can divide out the one with the smallest exponent. That will be a common factor of all of them. So 2 is the smallest exponent, so I can divide an x squared out of all of them. So if I do 15x cubed divided by 5x squared, and I do negative 5x squared divided by 5x squared, 15 divided by 5 is 3, x cubed divided by x squared is x, and then negative 5 divided by 5 is 1, x squared divided by x squared is also 1, so we don't need to put that. 1 times 1 is just 1. And so those are my factors, 5x squared and 3x minus 1.